says it's got both destinations. I think for live.
Oh, that doesn't sound good at all. See, I should have practiced over the summer, apparently.
Just make sure you're tuned.
Meeple syrup. Hey, that's enough of that. I will practice more. I promise. I will practice. But what I was saying is I don't think I hit the right selected stream. So
What does that mean?
who knows? I don't know. Because it says edit scheduled and it says Facebook or Meeple Syrup Show. And then it says or from selected streams. And it's like, oh, that's where I have that stream that I selected. But
I can find out. I don't.
Well, it doesn't matter.
Oh, look,
Adam says we're live.
Hello. See, someone knows.
Adam knows that we will flounder around and talk about whether or not we are live until somebody tells us we're live. So Adam's like, I'm going to be the smart one and tell them that they're live.
This is why we don't have guests on the first episode. So we can do this to ourselves. And this is Daphne, everybody.
Oh, Daphne's so cute and tiny.
She apparently doesn't grow, but that's okay.
She's just a mini.
She's a mini. Cute. I didn't know that Cocker Spaniels come in minis, but I own one now. And
I don't know if they do. Do they?
I didn't think she was the runt either. She wasn't especially smaller than her brothers or sisters, but she's very puppy sized and seems to stuck that way.
But have you seen any of her brothers and sisters lately? Can you do that? I don't know.
I probably message and see if they have pictures.
Yeah. I'd just be interested. To see if she is the runt of the litter, the literal runt of the litter. Well, welcome everybody. Hello to Adam Young and Jamie Jones and Amy Bio and Helena Capel and Jay Bell and Steph Straw and Matt Paquette. Anybody else out there who's checking in from parts unknown? It's very good to see you here. Erica and I have, well, I won't speak for Erica, but I can assume that we've both missed all of you because it's been a summer. It's been a thing.
Maybe that's some of you. No, I'm just joking. I miss all of you.
Now, Erica has gotten to actually go to a convention, so she might not miss some of you as much as I miss all of you. So, because I didn't go. But
it's almost 2 years. That's the crazy thing. 2 years since it was we realized some of us had seen each other and still counting for others.
Yeah, it's been a long haul. It's been a really long haul. And it's all been on social media for the good and very bad of that all, right?
Almost thank God for social media, but yeah, obviously not an exchange for actual human contact.
Well, no, not an exchange at all. And also I think that social media has gotten the best of most of us at least once or twice during this whole year and a half, 2 years almost that we've been kind of stuck in social media land. So let's talk shop for a bit. We are today going to do our September 2021 kickoff, which means looking back, seeing what we did over the summer while we were on hiatus, which is usually our 2 months in the summer when we say, hey, no more Meeple Syrup for 8 weeks. And we're going to do some work. Well, did we get any work done, Erica? Did we?
I mean, I worked a lot, but not on Meeple Syrup.
No. I mean, well, that's what the hiatus is for. It's not to work on Meeple Syrup. It's because Meeple Syrup takes up time. So we need to do other things in the summer. Yeah. And usually it's for going to cons and pitching games. And that didn't happen as much this summer. But what did happen this summer for you?
Pitching games, but now it's for one company only.
Right.
Anyway, though, to be fair, I am still pitching a few of my kind of contract, I grandfathered in my existing games sort of thing. So there are a few that I'm kind of actively putting out there, which feels kind of weird now because the other side of me is just doing everything for one company.
Yeah. How is that, by the way? What is it like just always doing work for the same publisher all the time?
It's kind of like ping-ponging anyway. Those weekends where you just sit down, you're like, I'm going to come up with a whole bunch of random things based on these, things I've identified might be something. It feels like that almost all the time a little bit.
Which is kind of your ball of wax, really, when you think about it. That's what one of your major strengths is.
I was going to say, I'm an idea generator, so...
Yeah, your take on creativity and ideas and being so fluid in the brainstorm sessions. I think that's a real strength, and I'm sure that's what they saw in you, and that said, "Oh, this person's real good at this. let's hire her."
It's fun, but it's a little wacky sometimes.
Sure. Do you get a lot of constraints like placed on you, like say it has to be this and it has to be within this box and all this stuff? I don't know.
Sometimes. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
sometimes. So for example, especially things before I got to Spin, they would
Yeah.
be sold or committed on what I would basically say they sold them on the components, but I can't tell you for the life of me what the game was supposed to be. So now it's like, here's all these bits, make a game. So I've done that a few times now. But thankfully we're coming to the end of those where I can actually be like, I'm going to help pitch, like I'll come up with the concepts, so pitch them together. That way, at least I know that the games work, and then we'll get into the details, right? Because if, you know, let's say that client doesn't want it. Oh, Sen just went black. Oh, he's back. Even though, you know, the client might not be as interested, doesn't mean that the game itself does, like the game itself could work for someone else. Or, you know, just like random things. Like I just came up with an idea. I was like, oh, this is so cool for this superhero. And it'd be like, oh, by the way, they don't seem to be focusing on that one. Okay, well, to be fair, it's just a cool idea anyway. Who else can we stick on this? Right?
Yeah,
and
fair enough,
sometimes things can just be like, that's too specific. But in general, it's like, does this work? Does it function? Basically, how do you play? Right? But I don't need the like too specific yet.
That's cool. And so it sounds like you got left holding a bag of some other people's games.
I don't know what was being sold. I'll be fully honest. I would think my first 2 months were nothing but like, hey, so you're committed to these bits? What's the game?
That actually might be kind of fun. I think
I feel like a game jam, like a constant game jam where you're like, okay, let's go.
This is a paid game jam. There you go.
Just be really creative with it, right?
That's all right. And so when can we expect like the first product that Erica has had her hands on coming up from Spin Master?
That's a good question. I think everything that I'm doing is 22 or 23 right now.
Cool.
The only thing, so I do a lot of rulebook correcting now is another big one. So if you go to the Spin website, you can already see 2 I've rewritten.
Oh, that's good.
And a how-to video that I also made for Sidekicks.
Oh, so were you in it, or was it like
it's me? It's my voiceover in my hand, but I'm like, you don't need to see me, but you're like, well, I was like, you know, well, moving things around.
How come you didn't post that? I would watch it.
Oh, it's on the Spin website. I should probably post it for everyone else. So what I did is it was like, you know, basically just did all this filming in my basement of how to play. And I'm doing another one right now. It's a lot harder though when you have to do like chaotic games. I'm like, I don't know how to film this, but anyway.
You have chaotic kids. They would
come so I recorded my family playing a game, and I was like, I'll do the setup and voiceover on top. But yeah, so I had to record this whole thing on how to play Sidekicks.
Cool. I look forward to seeing it. Hey, Julio. Nice to see you here too. So, looking back on the summer, let's see, what did we do? So we had a Kickstarter in the summer, Erica, you and I. Rat Queens, and Jess was the developer on that, and that did very well. So that was good. That was one thing that we did in kind of at the beginning of the summer-ish. I can't even remember now.
Yeah, it was June, right?
Yeah, so it was just before we went off air, because we did talk about it on air a little bit. So that was successful, and it's doing what it's doing, and we'll do some more work when we need to on it. But that's one thing down. And then what else did we do? So I guess you know, the other Kickstarter I was a part of just closed.
That's gotta be record breaking for like Kickstarter in general.
It was record breaking for RPGs for sure. So that was Avatar Legends, which I'm a consulting writer on. So that'll be fun to finish up that and get that out to people. And lots of people like Avatar, I guess. So that was wonderful.
You know what it was? It was a great kind of cross section of people who want RPGs, people who want stories, people who want product, people who want. It was really interesting, and I think it just proved that if there is starved audience for some things, it's amazing what it can do, right?
Yeah.
Because this appealed to so many people for so many different reasons, and it might actually have nothing even to do with RPG for some of them, but you know, who cares?
Yeah, no, that's a very good point. That RPGs are very accessible in a lot of ways because in many, many, many ways, they're just books, right? They're books that have rules and some dice and some stuff with them. And if
Or
you don't
really
want to use
fun
those dice,
details,
yeah.
right? So let's say you just love a world. Sometimes these branded RPGs are a super deep dive into the details that like people just love,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, there's a ton of that where, yeah, it's got all this poor doggy. It's got all this stuff in it that will I think broaden the horizons of people who already like the IP. So that was good. We have some questions from. Oh, hey, Logan's here and Tim Eisner's here. It's good to see you all. Matt is asking about Jess, and will we see Jess on the Meeple Syrup Show anytime soon? The answer is yes, when they get back from the Northwest Territories. They are very far away from us right now. They are 2 hours behind, so it's a little bit of a just disparity in scheduling and stuff like that. So Jess will be back in probably February of 2022.
Yeah.
So they'll probably join us.
They might jump in for like a show here and there if they can.
Yeah, and definitely probably on the January planning show, because we do a planning show at the beginning of every season-ish thing. And our seasons usually run about 5 months long. 2 months off, and then September, October, November, December, and then we have another season in January till June. So there's a short season and a long season and a 2-month break in between it all. So yeah, Jess will be back and they'll join us for sure in January, starting regularly in February. But hopefully they might come in every now and then. And a sure way to get Jess to come on is to pick a topic that they like. And then they can't deny it. They're like, oh, I got to come on for that because that person is an awesome designer or whatever, right? So there you go. Yeah, of course. Jess is awesome. So let's chit chat about what else happened in the summer. So no cons except for last couple of weeks.
Yeah. So it's like everything suddenly hit at once. And so I think this is one of those like, con moments with Erica, but we'll call this, because I feel like there's some very big warnings I think I need to give to people that I was worried about going into gathering, and I'll explain why in a minute. And I just think it's going to be so much bigger as we go into some of these larger ones. So this is things to watch out for yourself from a person with ADD who usually worries about these things, and people who don't normally have to register in on themselves and understand how they're feeling. So most people, when you're going to cons, are going to think that you can go back into the same routine you were at before. The only problem is you're completely out of practice. You're almost 2 years out of practice, which means you're out of practice talking to people, but you're also out of practice dealing with that much stimulus. Now, most of us, if you're lucky, that don't have ADD or ADHD or something like that, or hypersensitivity, stimulus is not something you monitor in yourself very often. You don't have to take the same stop outs or recognize that I am amped up. Why am I amped up, or why do I feel the way I do? Because when you're not good at checking those in, all of a sudden you can feel very angry, tired, scared, like you name it. All of a sudden you can be an explosion of like that one type of emotion and no idea where it's coming from, because this is not something you usually monitor in yourself. So just knowing that you can't go at the same pace, make sure you've got like scheduled stop out times where you're like, I need stimulus free for like a couple hours here and there. And then you're going to have to relearn your limits and boundaries. It's not going to be exactly the same. So, I attended a gathering a couple weeks ago, and it was only a couple hundred people, and never at the same time. And there were still times when it was like, this is a lot of stimulus. This is very overwhelming. So the idea of something like Gen Con, which could be like 20,000 people, I think you have to go in genuinely as if this is the first time you've ever done this, because it kind of is, and figuring out where and how you feel comfortable again, and knowing that it's okay to be like, and I'm done for now. I'll see y'all in a few hours, or maybe not. And that's okay too. You don't have to overdo it just because you haven't done it in 2 years. And that's
a really good point. A very good point
with Erica.
Con moments with Erica.
Well, I don't. So this
No,
is
I
one.
think that's
I
something
don't think
people don't
think like
appreciate.
this, right? Or they never had to. Like in all honesty, most
Yeah.
people didn't have to think about their self-regulation because that's not normally something they worry about. But you actually are going to have to think like that until you figure out where your comfort levels are again.
Very good point. Very good point. Cool. Well, you know what? Helena is a little bit rushing here. She's rushing us. She's like, oh, what's gonna happen next? So okay. We'll flip this and we'll now start looking forward instead of looking back. And we posed this question on August 30th on the Shop Talk page. If you're not a member of Shop Talk, get on there. We like talking to you. So here are a couple Shop Talk topics. That's a lot. That's a mouthful to say. Try to say that 3 times quick, Erica.
No.
Where people have given us our meeps have given us a bunch of stuff. Some of them from people who are right here. And John Dubois said, these all sound like things, Erica, that you said that he should probably have been doing before the pandemic, right?
Know yourself.
Yeah. And Jamie Jones is saying that he personally still doesn't think he's ready for big cons. And I am not as well.
So. Will say that was my major takeaway from gathering. And again, that would be like attending a very, very, very small convention, and by most standards. The week started feeling very long very quickly. Just because it's a lot. And I was just like, and I think I'm ready to go home. And I love all you people, but I think I'm still ready to go home.
I could actually sense that from your posts.
And it was just like one of those things. Yeah, like I'm ready to go home. And I know I was not the only one. There were, and there were people who didn't realize they were going to feel that way. That it's like,
sure,
I think I want to go home now. And you're like, you know what? Just see how you are. Like, take a moment,
Isn't that a Tiffany song or a Debbie Gibson song?
Which one?
I think I want to go home now.
Oh, I think I think I'm alone now.
It is. I'm just joking.
Oh, okay.
But you know what's funny is the other thing that people have to recognize is that those 200 people, when we're at the gathering, we know like almost all of them personally.
They had to be they had to be fully vaccinated. Most people had tests coming in and leaving.
Right.
And so great. Again, there was even people were anxious there. But you can't guarantee that same sort of stuff once you hit thousands.
No.
So personally, I don't know if I can do it yet.
Yep.
I am booked for PAX U, which I mean is smaller compared to what some of these can be, especially on the gaming side. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, let's wait and see.
Yeah, a lot of it's gonna wait and see. So that Helena doesn't get like super bored with us, let's talk about what's happening in the future. So maybe this is a thing. What do you think? Beth Rimmel says, I don't know if this is appropriate to tackle, but I recently learned about hate raids directed at actual play broadcasts on Twitch that feature diverse players. Maybe it's more of an RPG thing. Yes, totally. And video gaming. I don't know, but maybe something on that and what newbie AP streamers can do to lessen the effects. So that's a really interesting topic. And Twitch and other forms of media are kind of beyond me at this time personally. But I do think that the idea of addressing, new media, content creators, para relationships, all that stuff might be something that we need to talk about because it does affect people in the industry and it actually affects people who are putting themselves out there to make gaming more interesting, more fun, and they're bearing the brunt of a lot of this.
It's boundary issues, right?
Negative,
and we don't have them established. But I think it's a bigger thing too. If you watch it the way that people use YouTube and Twitch these days, it is their cable TV. So the way that they, bounce around, it's almost like watching like nonstop public access with more, more budget or, more skills. What the difference is though, is that at least if it was, classic media styles, the interaction's not the same. Right. Whereas here, these people have direct access.
Yes. Yeah, and those para relationships that are kind that you think you're friends because you talk to them every week on Twitch, those get pretty dark pretty fast, or can, right? So we have to be aware of those things. It's kind of funny because I'm just reading our list here of people who are in the chat, and I know every single one of these people personally. Right? We've talked, we've met at cons, we've shaken their hands, we've eaten dinner with them.
That
and
also
so
shows you how small this
yeah,
industry it is in its own way too.
yeah. And now Ophel is saying that he loves your background, Erica, and
Oh, my
long
random
live
crap.
developers, long live developers.
Hi,
And
Val.
he sends kisses from Brazil. There you go. So yeah, a lot of the people that we personally interact with on this show are like literally our friends IRL in real life. But a lot of streamers, they're getting attacked left, right, and center by people who they don't know, and that's real tough. So
It's faceless
that's
and
right, Amy. We
easy,
think we know.
right?
Hi, Cynthia. It's lovely to see everybody. This is almost like a con. This is good. I like this.
Well, you know, it's great. It's like it's an excuse for everyone to just get to talk, which is awesome.
All right, so that may be a topic we look into. Andreas Wild said, I have a crush on Philip Malinsky from Lucky Duck Games. Philip is a great designer and developer. I've worked with him a lot through Lucky Duck. Jess has as well. And he has many titles under his belt, from kids game to epic RPGs. And in general, Andreas is wondering why we don't have more European voices here in the like Canadian and American broadcast scene. And for us, just as a note, it's because we're live. That's why we don't get a lot of the Europeans on the show. We get more of the Australians and New Zealanders because they're like 9 o'clock in the morning where they are, 10 o'clock in the morning. But we would still love to have any European who's willing to stay up real late. Come on, or we'll do something different, depending on what kind of stuff we have going on in our own lives and whether or not we can figure out a schedule that works for everybody. We've done some other special recordings in the past. We just like doing stuff live. It's just live.
Yeah, it's one of those things we'll have to figure out the medium of, because the last 2 years we've been trying to really get people from other countries, and we managed some pretty good ones. Like I think we've now done, like we had Phil from Brazil. I think Casey was in Nigeria. We've had people come on from Australia, but the problem, as Sen said, is the time of day. But what we might have to do is just see if, like, even once a month we call it like the international episode.
And it's like 9 o'clock in the morning and
something like that. Maybe it's like a Saturday at
sure,
9 a.m. So then it's like evening for them.
Yeah, I don't teach till 11, so that's fine. Or I can get to the dojo in an hour.
Something, you know what I mean? Yeah. Just because they won't work at this format. But the good news is too, if we ever have really, really good guests that we can't get on Meeple Syrup, there is always the chance we can get them for Ludology instead. Yeah,
because Ludology is we don't record at any specific time, right? Because it's not live. So yeah, that's a possibility. So we might get some people for Ludology. So you guys get, you have a double deal when you make suggestions to Erica and I. If it doesn't work for Meeple Syrup, it'll probably work for Ludology, or vice versa, or we'll use them on both, right? It's like, oh, this would be a good Ludology episode as well, because we do stuff slightly differently on Ludology.
Yeah, I would say this is more informal, so you can kind of have more like a chat or round table, whereas Ludology can be a bit more of an interview in its own way.
Yeah. And the other thing is that obviously on here you can ask questions, the audience can ask questions live, so that's a nice kind of perk. Other European designers that Andreas was suggesting are Rita Model, who did I think Men at Work, and Peter Rustmeyer, who won the Kennerspiel. So yeah, lots of people from Europe are obviously great designers. We would love to talk to you, so we can figure something out someday, I think. Sarah Ship suggested Emily LaRoche as a guest. I'm not sure for what. We'll find out sometime. But the other thing she was asking for was looking for advice and best practices for designer deliverables from publishers specifically. So what Sarah would like to know is, what are the best practices around formatting and submitting documents such as component descriptions, change logs, and tracking component details and stuff like that? And submitting them to to a publisher. And maybe people like Matt Paquette, who's on the call right now, have comments on that from the graphic design and product development end of things, but that's what she would like to know. And is there anything that publishers have like as a standard? I know Helena's here, Amy's here. Are there standards that you would like to see when people submit files to you, who aren't the graphic designers, who are just like the game designers, who are the game designers, right? And maybe don't have it all laid out properly. So
actually pricing is a really interesting one, because I have to say
mhm,
that is definitely a skill that whether you kind of mean to or not, you develop over time. The more you work with people, especially as a designer, where you start to be like, oh, well, deck runs are like these, component costs are roughly these. If they want to get per unit cost to this, they might have to do this in the box for this. Adding this puts the box cost up by this. You start to learn that. And I mean, you learn it very fast, I'm assuming, if you're a publisher. But it is something you do genuinely start to learn as a designer. And
mhm.
I think there probably is, like, it'd be neat if we came up with like a basic of how much does this kind of cost, and where do
We can make
you
a game.
well, because there's things that you don't think about, right? People who box everything themselves, people who pay people to assemble, people like
Mhm.
there's so many different layers of
Oh yeah,
this.
there's always ways to save, right? There's always ways to like save a little bit of money by beating the feet with your own street with your own feet, right? To put a little elbow grease into things, but
Yeah, like the
you don't
things
want to
you
do that for
learn that you did.
10,000 boxes.
Yeah, the things you learned but didn't realize you learned, but it's like it all goes into these factors, because there is one of those things where it's great to shoot for the moon on a prototype of like what you would love this to be, but there's
Mhm.
also something to be said if you kind of inherently understand the cost of what you put together, because then when you're pitching, you're also kind of saying, this is roughly sitting at a $30 game, $40 game, something like that, because you kind of start to see it.
Yeah, I think that's a great skill. And that kind of appraisal skill might be something that we can bring in a uh, manufacturer for, publisher, all that kind of
Mhm.
stuff. Matt Paquette is saying in the chat that he created a web form for component schemas that populates a Google sheet, information like type, size, how it's used, where does
Mm.
it reside on the table versus the hand, what special print treatment does it require, like dual layer, spot UV, et cetera, et cetera. So Matt is on the ball. Amy replied that she only self-publishes, so she doesn't take external submissions, so she just makes what she wants, which is cool. And Jean Dubois, I keep saying it with a French accent. Sorry, John. John is saying that because there are fewer weather sounds on Meeple Syrup, he would like to file a complaint. Because if you've ever listened to Ludology, we all like making the storm sounds, the lightning round sounds.
Oh,
But here on the Meeple
I
Syrup
just
Show,
like listening to Scott attempt to make lightning
we,
noises.
yeah, right. We actually do have sound effects. You just can't hear them. It's the sound of snow falling. That's all that happens up here in Canada, you know.
Yeah, if you ask anybody, there's once you hit the border, guys, it's nothing but snow.
Nothing but snow. John lives in Detroit. He knows the border. He knows where of what we speak.
We could
Uh,
make up our own sound effect, but the funny thing is actually, so I actually wanted to put a sound effect in for ludology, but Scott wanted to do it himself, so now I'm like, "Now you have to do it."
that is okay. And so Sarah's question really boils down to that we often talk, and I know I do a lot, we talk about how to get the pitch in and how to get your game to in front of a publisher, but we don't often talk about what happens after it gets signed and what we have to submit and what your deadlines are and all that
You know
kind of
what? That's
stuff.
a good one, because different contracts mean very different things and
Yeah.
what that end looks like. And so maybe we actually do one like just focus on, okay, what happens after, let's say, the prototype
Yeah.
has been contracted.
Yeah. So yeah, what is the designer responsible for between signing the game and the
Or
game
what
actually
you do
being published?
ideally hope happens
Mm,
after that. Because
right.
let's be honest, some contracts include developers, some don't. Some
Mm,
timing
scope
is a big
creep. Scope
factor,
creep.
right?
Kickstarter stretch goals. Those are the death of me.
Yes, have you discussed all of those first, and such and such and such?
Jess is on the chat right now saying they'll pop in from time to time this season. They'll be back as a regular in the new year. And yes, they will. That'll be awesome to have Jess back. Um, Other questions. Let's see. Oh, Helena, this is a question from you, or a note from you. Helena says that she is very interested in the board game media moving onto newer platforms like Clubhouse, TikTok, etc., and how they are reaching newer audiences because of it. Maybe we could do an interview with Benita Carr, who is doing such a good job with it. And yes, so Benita is on Twitch, and then I think
Twitch is a big. It's definitely for board games where I think people have been using it for, RPGs and like talk shows and all these things, or even just streaming video games. But it's amazing how much board games, or especially like board games, are getting a hold over there because you can play with everybody, including the audience.
Yes. Yeah. And then Raina is doing TikToks, like little short 1-minute things. So I think there is a really, I think I sense a little bit of a thread to pull on here in the meta-analysis of it all. That new media and dealing with all the media stuff like para relationships and hate raids and stuff is a something we should probably talk about. So I think if we combine Beth's and Helena's thing, we might get something out of that, which is great. Oh yeah, and Beth actually just said, oh yeah, and Raina. Perfect. Those are two people who we love to talk to. Andreas then asks us to say, hey, what's it like inside Prospero Hall as a game design studio? And such studios still are rare, but might become more of a thing. And how are their game design different than traditional designers? And so that might be interesting.
I think there's definitely a rise to the gaming group designers. I think Prospero Hall might be a bit of an odd man out in that all of them are one person. Yeah. What could be interesting more though is look at what, like, for example, Flat Out has become.
Yeah, Flat Out does a great job of that.
Very reminiscent of like what a lot of the collectives in Germany do. It's these design groups, right? And they work as a unit. And so I think Flat Out's probably the best North American example of this, but I don't doubt more people couldn't start, collabing and creating their own groups.
Yeah, like a little design house. We've often talked about doing a design house. I've talked with Jess and Matt and Jay, and it was originally Jay and me and Josh, but then Josh goes to work with Helena for some reason. I don't know.
Working with your spouse.
Anyway, so yeah, I think and I'd love to talk to the Flat Out team anyways because I think they're wonderful. So maybe get them in. We've already had great Funko people on, so.
Well, that's why I say I think it's interesting, but I think ultimately what a Prospero Hall ends up being is kind of like more similar to like a higher mass, entry level publisher, because they own their own printing, right? Like even Spin Master doesn't own its own printing. When you actually own your own factories, it's very different, and then everybody producing under one label is very different. I think there's something very interesting about how do you manage when all of you are a person, not just one.
Yeah, that's interesting. So yeah, let's see if we can get in touch with Flat Out. I think that'd be a wonderful thing.
There's like 5 of them, right, or something like that.
I think there's 3 main people or 4 main people, and then they kind of work with other people around in different ways. Yeah,
I'd love to hear about how they function, because I do think this is a good option for, let's be honest, things might get a little lean in their own way going forward. Even though gaming is like a huge growing market, the risk taking is going to get very interesting because
with the way the costs are going. And the other thing is that Flat Out works across international borders and in 2 countries at least. I think I know they're like half Canadian, half American, something like that. So anyway, it's a really interesting model to follow. So yeah, let's earmark that one. Zakir Jaffrey says, great suggestions above. I'd like to see Phil Walker Harding on the show. So would we. Phil's awesome.
We've had Phil for a couple of years.
It's been forever, actually. I think it's like first season or something. I've always admired the simplicity and elegance of his designs. Yeah, but Phil's in Australia, so that should work out.
I should just poke him tomorrow. Remind me.
Yeah,
I'm talking to him about something else anyway. But
poke.
Yeah, I should just be like, hey Phil, come on the show.
Yeah, Phil is
talked in a while. He's got a bunch of stuff coming out anyway, so I think it'd be perfect timing.
Great. I said Phil Walker Harding is a good egg who makes great games. And Zakir's like, egg? Is that like game designer lingo I'm unaware of? No,
No, it's just like
Zakir, it's just
nerdy.
me being a nerd. Actually, I think it's a Britishism, if anything.
Or yes,
Um,
like a good egg. Yeah. You know
yeah.
what's funny? It can't be that uncommon because my kids actually have a book. It's a series, like one's like the couch potato, the next one's like the good egg.
Oh.
And it's all about him, how he's a good egg and all his brothers and sisters are bad eggs.
Oh no. Do they smell?
No, they just do bad things.
Oh,
So.
I see. Miklos Fitch from Our Family Plays Games would love to hear from POCs in the industry, people of color, on the subject of marketing to underrepresented groups which are really unaware of the wide range of modern board games. You're not talking about creating programs to talk to high-risk school kids, etc., etc.
No,
But
like
to
grassroots
folks,
movements for
yeah,
like those specific communities. I think that's an excellent idea.
yeah, but to folks that can afford the games that the industry is pumping into the world, right? But are just literally unaware.
Yeah, because that's not their segment, right? Like
Yeah.
that's what I'm saying. Because grassroots are often the most difficult. Like, but when you can manage them, like, sorry if you can hear the barking.
That's okay.
If you can manage them, it's like you're tapping a whole new market, and they really pay off. And the funny thing is, they don't have to be expensive, but the problem is they're usually very time consuming.
Yeah.
Is the trade off.
Yeah,
So,
it's a
anyway,
lot
that
of
would be really cool.
time and effort to make headway into a new market. But like Erica says, new markets are fresh people, right?
And usually, if you're the
Customers.
first one in, you are usually and don't mess it up.
Yeah, well, that's what I
You
was
are
gonna
the
say.
trusted brand, and
Yeah,
that
you become the
becomes
brand
actually
leader.
that's a really, really big thing.
Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, you can actually see that at work in specific communities where a brand has led into that community first, and generations past that, everybody in that
It's
community
loyalty.
still buys that thing because it's a
Yeah,
trusted name, and that
which
company did
doesn't
not do
happen.
wrong by that community, right?
Yeah, honestly, brand loyalty is a hard thing to get, especially in gaming because people don't pay that much attention.
Yeah.
But to be fair, they don't pay that much attention on a lot of products either. But if you can get somebody to genuinely trust what you do, they don't often stray to other places.
No, the loyalty is quite intent. Zach Connolly wants us to bring in some convention organizers to talk about how they have fared the last 2 years with
Ooh,
lockdowns,
or
mandates, and
how they
safety
manage, like,
practices moving forward.
yeah, or
Yeah.
I'm really curious. I think there is still definitely space for online conventions, and I
Hmm.
think there's definitely an accessibility thing that needs to continue. What I'm curious about is how many of people like are going to embrace this the idea of the dual con, or somehow separating the digital and the physical, because
Right.
I do think there's a market for both.
Yes, I do too. So I've definitely talked to a lot of people who may be disabled and not able to travel, and they're like, digital cons are it. Digital cons are the way that I can be part of this community. Even somebody like myself who has respiratory illnesses, it's like, oh yeah, this is probably a good thing for me to stay involved and still talk and still give panels and without having to risk my health while this whole thing is going on. So yeah, I see a total thing. There were definitely talks at the beginning about people, like groups running both. Like, we're going to do our digital in this time and our physical at this time. But they're both a lot of work, right? And so, are you splitting your audience? I don't think so. Actually, I really think
I
you're
think
actually
you have one for
gaining.
both. Yeah, if
Yeah.
you choose not to do one, you'll probably do the other.
Yeah, well, that's true too. But what I mean is that if you are doing both, you're not going to get half the people at one and half the people at the other. You'll probably still get everybody who can travel at one, and then the people who are less likely or able to travel at the second one, plus some of the people who still would travel because they just want to play games at the
Mhm.
digital one. Is your digital one going to turn dividends like your physical one? No, because it can't. It doesn't do the same thing. It's a different type of beast, and people have to figure out how to make it worthwhile for
Well,
them.
and there actually are interesting platforms now where if you wanted to, it is easy to connect the digital store to these things. So the purchasability is still there as well, but this has to be integrated. And that also
Yeah,
means
yeah.
that publishers would have to ensure that they have the right footprint online so they could handle online purchases or direct them to the 3 companies that you want to support the
resellers
best.
online and they get like a code because they were a member.
Like there's a lot of ways to do this. But you would have to have a really good organizer because they'd almost have to let each of the publishers know that this is essentially the minimum checklist that you would want to have completed.
Yeah.
Right? Like how your presence would work.
Yeah. Going back to Miklos' suggestion about diverse audiences, Adam has a comment in the feed that I'm going to read. Make more content about the basics of making games in early stages might help in reaching more diverse representation in the future of the industry. I know I've said this in the past for more selfish reasons. Selfish Adam. But I also enjoy a degree of privileges that some may not have: extra time to research, ask questions, etc. So maybe having some 101 stuff, how to, some very basic things, content about that might be something that we can do, either on the show or kind of off the show too. Like we can run that kind of stuff or produce some media about that might help people who want to do game design, just don't have the time to do all the research and ask questions that Adam is able to do, and put it in one repository.
You think about how lucky we are that we have such a huge design community kind of at our disposal. It is very different when you're watching a group full of designers putting things together and competing against that than trying to figure it all by yourself, because even if you don't intend to, you're always gonna be learning when other people around you are already kind of doing the quote unquote right thing, or like are pushing to do the new thing. Right. So gathering is almost an example of what do you do when you have all these people who are trying to already push the envelope, and that's where you're going to start to see it. That's going to push you. And if you don't have that, which I mean, most people don't, let's be honest, it's like not like magically this, it takes work to set up a community or find others like you. It's not the same because you're going at the pace of everybody around you. And that's not necessarily, I'm not saying it has to be a bad thing. You don't have to run at things. Everyone has to be me. But there is something about the company and what you learn just through being in that environment.
Sure.
And because we've actively watched, like how many people have me and you both actively watched design, develop, like on the spot, right? Like, or, together or long term, or like you learn so much faster watching others do it too.
Yeah. I just talked about that in class today. Social learning theory. That's
social learning is a huge thing, especially if you value what they're giving.
Yeah. So I'm going to read a couple more off the chat, and then we'll go back to the forum. Manolis asks, or says that he's recently heard that IDW was going to be closing their games imprint. That is true. Do we know what impact that may have on the industry? Well, that means I get a bunch of contracts back. That's all that means for me.
This wasn't that shocking.
No.
So a little insight is that, their print is where they make money, like 100%. That is where most of their money comes from. Games hasn't really ever done that great, especially recently. So I think it's just, and this might be something we unfortunately see more of in the industry in general, is that if it's not viable, are you going to keep going? Especially at the cost we're at now.
The other thing is that, IDW has shareholders, which makes it a different company from lots of other companies.
Right. So they legally have to turn a profit. Otherwise they can't continue, which is
their most profitable department over the last couple of years, if I remember correctly, wasn't actually even print. It was their transmedia. It was their movie production, TV show production.
Those all just cross each other. So I think it just,
it was just a thing.
How many other people will close up?
So I mean, when you think about it, Manolis, like games don't have a huge margin at all, ever. And then when you add in the strictures of IP licensing, which was what IDW did heavily, because they had access to them. And then when you also then factor now things like, shipping and manufacturing, which will lead me to my next point, then, it's just a timely exit that was, the writing was on the wall for IDW maybe a year ago. And then this is just like nail in the coffin stuff. So what does this mean for the industry? I don't know. I mean, there are definitely other comic book companies who are thinking about, taking up the charge. Jay with off the page games, is definitely into, hey, let's make every single comic book game that we can, as long as it's from a creator owned standpoint. Marvel isn't doing anything wrong with anything they're doing with FFG.
No, and you know what, there are definitely there's definitely companies right now who own these franchises who are themselves looking for new people. So I'll just say that is something that I've noticed a switch in the last year, is rather than I mean, there's kind of two things. One is that it seems like IPs in general can be open to just about anybody if you're willing to negotiate the rates. And I mean, to the point where people who would never have been considered for license, you have a chance. You just have to be willing to,
yes,
give the money over. But the other thing is looking at people who own there's tons of these in-between companies where they own this one thing outright. And rather than kind of get lumped in with somebody else, they're now going to be searching out people themselves.
Yes.
To start making, these side media pieces like games.
Yeah. And those media pieces like games are actually really, they're right for the certain things. So we've had so much feedback on mind management, Jay and I, people all around the world playing mind management. They've never, ever read the comic books. They almost invariably, people who haven't read it will message us and say, and now we've bought every single thing that Matt Kint has ever written, that kind of stuff. And for Matt, that's exactly why he did this. It's like, it's a brand extension. It's perfect. He loves games. He's our friend. We play games with him all the time, but it's like, yeah, that's exactly what I want out of this, is my stories to be told more and more, people to go back to my things. And, if you're really being mercenary about it, buy the things that I made. He's not, but the idea is still there. Like, I want people to find mind management through whatever avenue it is. If it's games first, wonderful. If it's the comics first, great. If it happens to, become an Amazon or Netflix show and they come back and read the comics later, perfect.
Well, and those
wonderful.
are options now. So we live in a very different space where all these things are slowly bleeding together. So there's also the chance of being the first to something where maybe there wasn't as much before. If you can find those right overlaps, right? I mean, fingers crossed we can manage the same thing with Rat Queens, where people are like, hey, what's this crazy thing? Right? I'm going to go buy all the wacky ass comics now too.
Some of them are real wacky ass.
Yeah.
I love them all.
But that's what makes them fun.
Yeah.
But obviously check your ratings before you go into something. Yeah.
Paul Saxberg, going back to that comment that I had about the shipping and manufacturing, was wondering if addressing the current manufacturing and shipping situation would be a topic of interest to people. And I think, in our line of video casting, I think people definitely would. And I know Allison Chase is listening and watching, and somebody who can speak to things from a logistics standpoint would be great to have on the show again. I don't think we've ever really had somebody on the show who could really get down with logistics.
Or at least that wasn't their focus when we brought them in, because you've had a few different people who do some of these planning, but I don't think we really got into like
the global shipping issues.
Yeah, we talked more about like distribution and all these, because at that point it wasn't as big a deal getting your shipping container over here.
And now it is. So Allison, maybe you'd like to be our expert on that. Allison is the next person in the chat who said, online conventions allow me to participate in so many things I couldn't otherwise. And she hopes they stick around. Amy thinks that there's a market for both online and in-person conventions as well. Jim in the chat says, I'd love to hear more about component making for prototypes, cool tools to help, home printing tips and tricks, best way to make custom wooden bits. And I think that'd be wonderful.
We
I
should get
used to.
Julio on here. 'Cause holy
Well,
crap,
yeah,
is that guy a crazy
Julio's in the
toys.
chat too. So
Yeah, if Julio's
if you
here,
ever want to see
we
like
need to play with all
hands
of his
down some of
toys.
the best prototypes ever that are playable and cool, and like Julio was making stuff before 3D printing was a thing, right? And it was just so cool to see. So
You
we
know who
might
else
have to have
might be
people out to do that.
good?
Yeah,
What's it's Angela L. What's her last name? I can't remember. Canadian. She's doing all that stuff. Last
Lazenbury.
I'm so terrible with
Lazenbury.
last names. But because she's doing all of that woodcraft and gotten really, really into the laser cutting and things like that, because you remember how she was doing the layered topic graphic maps, all these things. It might
Yeah,
be really interesting to talk about the logistics of these what she's doing.
yeah, Lazary.
Yeah, because she's jumped like feet first into all of the wood cutting.
Yeah, well, it's become her business. So
That's exactly it. And I
yeah,
think there's something very fascinating about that because, not everyone has a 3D printer, but to be honest, it's laser cutters are a little bit more prevalent. So you might have an easier time getting one of those. And, you need space and you need space. If you're going to
yeah.
have a 3D printer, there's chemicals, there's things to worry about. Laser cutting, not quite the same.
Hmm.
Right? I don't know. I think there's interesting things. Like we could probably actually get people who are, like mini experts in their own way in these different types of creating.
Yeah, I know Tatiana would love to show off her casting and stuff like that. She likes making
Yeah.
figures,
Like
and
how do
yeah,
people do that? Because
and like do the videos of it. She does live streams of stuff.
yeah.
But yeah, we could probably have her on the show as well. So lots of people doing making, 3D printing, vinyl casting, laser cutting. Katie Cow is my go-to for lasers. So lots of people out there who do some cool stuff.
And just knowing that those are options honestly changed how you think and how you
About your
prototype.
game design.
So
Yeah.
when you know something is possible to you, all of a sudden that means you can make games that can include those types of things. And that really changes everything about the way you think.
Yeah. So in terms of laser cutters, Jim is saying that he almost pulled the trigger today to buy one. And Angelica has a Glowforge, and that's what Katie uses. They're very good home level laser cutters. I have friends who have like big, billion-watt lasers, but they're like doing more industrial cutting.
Yeah, something you could stick in your garage is what I'm thinking, like,
Mhm.
or a spare room somewhere with
Or you can do the Matt Leacock when Matt Leacock wasn't, wealthy Matt Leacock buying a laser cutter. You can
use
just do
tools.
the he would no he would cut out sticky foam layers and then paste them on top of each other until it was like really thick.
That's like old school modeling
Yeah, yeah,
techniques. Yeah.
yeah, and it was wonderful. Like the whole prototype for Thunderbirds was done that way. So there's all these like spaceships made of like 7 layers of sticky foam. They're wonderful. They all had like a drilled hole because Matt really likes sticking pegs in things.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, haven't had Matt on the show in a long time too.
Once
Bez
briefly at
at the gathering.
gathering. He was,
Good.
yeah,
Busy
trying
doing
to
his
sell a
thing.
few things. Yeah.
Bez is asking for topics about doing things on a budget, maybe managing stress.
Mm.
Yeah, and Bez would also be happy to come on the show again.
You
Yeah,
know what?
those are
Stress
great
is a big
topics.
one. I think we've kind of touched on it before, but it'd be nice to even have someone who's a bit more an expert in this field to
Yeah.
be more psychology based. But let's be honest, anything in this level is rejection based and very rejection culture in a lot of ways. And I think that's something that we often don't think about going into design. It's no different than any other art field
Mm-hmm.
where you're constantly producing, but you're also constantly having it shut down. But often because it's not necessarily the right time, right person, whatever it is. But no matter what, it's still technically rejection. So it's something that I don't know most people are prepared for. You have to kind of set up your mentality for it. And I
Yeah.
think that, almost having someone who might be able to come on and almost do like a lesson a little bit in this kind of thing, like how to interpret rejection into like proper feedback kind of thing.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and everybody on the chat now is talking about laser cutting and libraries and scheduling at the library and stuff like that. As a starter way to do things, use the library. That's what it's there for.
Play with someone
And
else's first, because you don't want to
yes.
dump all that money and not know what you're doing.
Speaking of librarians, this is great because Rebecca Strang is commenting on the Shop Talk page about transcription services for podcasts, which is wonderful. But she's also a librarian. And we wanted to get maybe Rebecca and Jen the board gaming librarian from Twitter, to come on the show and talk to us about how to set up board game libraries for community centers, for libraries, because that's where they work, for schools, all those types of things. And I think they'd be wonderful to have on. People just don't understand the power of a library if you've never really had to go to one. I mean, most of us have been to libraries, but have you had to go to a library?
Right. We're talking about are accessing communities that don't know you exist.
Yeah.
This is actually one of the perfect examples of that.
Yep.
Imagine if you get people in young enough that they recognize these games that, gamers have on their shelves, and they already have all this base knowledge. If they walk out like that, imagine the games that they can pick up, because the biggest barrier or design, exactly. Because the biggest barrier I've really started noticing this trying to watch people create for mass is just the understanding of what mass knows and doesn't know. It's this constant either really undervaluing their intelligence, and I've seen this so much recently, or it's like,
only count to 5.
That dumb, right? And then there's other moments where it's like, okay, but you're trying with way too much prior assumed knowledge here. You're asking them to understand not one, but maybe 2 mechanics already. It's like, how did they get there? And so you need that exact middle between those 2 things.
It's really hard
what that is.
We were pitching to Ravensburger about some game. Doesn't matter which one. I probably under NDA, so I can't say it. But we were pitching to them, and we were like taking everything out, and they're like, no, it's still too complex. Still too complex. It is still too complex. And we're like, then I guess it isn't much of a game. They go, yes, that's exactly what we want. Not much of a game, but enough that it's a game, right? So it's this really hard line to get your head into if those aren't the types of games that you like or fall into naturally, right? And I'm not saying that, anybody's inherently better because they like more mechanics or whatever. I'm saying it's a hard thing. It's a skill.
Well, it is. You have to build to that. That's like saying, I was trying to explain this same concept to someone the other day, and it would be like saying, all right, well, you're in grade 2 and I'm going to give you grade 8 material. Like, I mean, it's still school level stuff, right? It's still subjects you recognize, but you're not even close prepared for that subject line, because think how much you had to have learned in order to be able to do grade 8. Right? It's like, that's basically the difference between mass and hobby. Now that grade 2 isn't dumb, right? They're just in grade 2. But that's it. And so they don't know all those things that took you to get to grade 8. And so that's kind of my analogy for people. What I'm like, you got to find that they're not dumb, but you're either going to have to be a great introduction to one mechanic really well, or kind of 2 half mechanics very properly sandwiched.
That's a great way of putting it. Yeah. And we're definitely, getting into the times when that is the current market, actually, everybody out there, if you're listening.
A lot more, because that's kind of where the safe bet is.
Yes.
Now, this is why I say I've seen a lot more coming from designers recently. And I'll say that's my number 1 watch out right now for especially experienced designers, because this is a really big problem. Yeah. Just remember, your audience is not dumb, but they have not learned those mechanics yet. So you're either teaching it. That's it. You are now teaching that mechanic.
Yep. It's like my first roll and write. My first deck.
It has to be, what would the intro to that one mechanic be? And if there's another one, it has to be fluid, and it has to not be additional rules.
Yeah, and there can't be too much stuff left on the table that you have to read and process, and there's a lot to it. So it's an art. And Adam probably gets this because Adam's also an electronic musician. It's super easy to add more hi-hats and more cowbell and more sounds to a composition, but it's really hard to strip stuff out and still have a good track, a good song left at the end, right? So that mixes well with other music and all that kind of stuff. There's an art to it. Same thing with mass market. Eric Sunden would like to hear from Dina Rems on the show. She knows how to market a Kickstarter, and she has many interesting perspectives. Nit Bjorkman is a graphic designer with a focus on board game rules. She has been great as she has perfected the rules for 2 of his games, and he's got a couple of those signed.
You know what, rule writing is definitely one that we got to get into again.
Yeah, it's always a bugaboo. Like every season, everybody wants it.
You know what? It's a tough one, and the thing is, the more you do it, the more you just start to see like it's a tough one. It's a tough one. It's like probably one of the most important things in that box, in all honesty. But it's the thing we all hate the most. Like we have a problem.
I actually like writing rules. And
see, I don't.
People just don't like me writing rules.
What I mean is, people don't like reading them.
Yeah,
especially if they're bad. People don't like. There's some opposition to rule books, partly because they're not fun.
Yeah, they are not.
But they're so bloody important.
What if we called them fun books?
I just feel like we have a very strange mentality with them.
For sure.
And considering it's like, yeah, they bought the game, that rules is now the barrier of them being in or out.
Yeah, right. And Nit is a graphic designer, so she probably focuses more on layout and stuff like that. But that's super important.
That's important, yeah.
Really, really important. Andrew has a great point. So great that I'm actually going to put it on the screen. I forgot we could do that. Andrew says, with mass, I think it's more about attention span than intelligence, and I think you are correct. I think you are correct, sir. That it isn't that people who like or who are just getting into mass are quote unquote, less intelligent. It's they don't have the attention span or the power to be able to focus on 3 mechanics at once. So you got to give them 1 or 2 parts of separate ones, right? So I think you're right that it's probably attention span and cognitive load, and it's like building up tolerance to X number of things, right? So you're just training wheels. It's training wheels, right? And then as we add more mechanics, we take the training wheels off. Jess is making a suggestion. Jess suggests Amabel Holland would be cool to get on and with Hollandspiel. And Jess, because they are a sometimes host, is just going to reach out to Amabel themselves. There you go. Thank you, Jess. Yeah, and Jamie Jones brings up the fact that the best rulebook writer is Josh Cabell, and I will sing Josh's praises till the cows come home because he does a lot of the rule books that I've worked on. And yes, he is wonderful. Josh can take my robot rules and turn them into human rules, and then he can lay them out into readable human rules. So Josh is a godsend.
People.
Yeah. If you can snag a good graphic designer who also understands how to write rules and talk in game talk, but human game talk, not robot game talk like I do, you will never want to let them go. But then they go and work with their wife again. I don't know. Anyway,
what are these messed up priorities?
I know. Adam has a thing on the forum. He could use some hope and inspiration. There's definitely a need for realism and people setting their expectations properly, but he's maybe become a little too good at that. And it'd be nice to see talking about how to make it feel possible to do things despite all the turmoil and despite how the world has become. The challenges before the pandemic, the challenges after the pandemic, shipping woes, it's just a lot. And, I think you're right that somebody who can talk about success in these times would be great. Perhaps somebody who is doing it on their own without a big infrastructure would give people hope. And I think it's a great topic because hope is such a powerful force. And so, if there are people out there who want to talk about that and want to talk about success during these difficult times, let us know, because I think those are the stories that do need to be told. I mean, we can talk till the cows come home, again, cows, about how, Asmodee did or WotC did during the pandemic. Like, WotC did not suffer at all during the pandemic in terms of Dungeons and Dragons.
Warehouses cleaned out for the first time ever of crap that hasn't sold since the early 2000s. That wasn't the problem, right? But I think a big part is kickstarting our creativity again. For a lot of people, unless again it's like you're stuck to deadlines, what is forcing you to go out and get something done? because you're not necessarily planning on attending cons. So setting your own self goals, let's be honest, they're the easiest ones to break, right? And so I think it comes, it could be,
Yes, no, you're totally
truth.
honest. I forgot to set my writing goal for this day today. Well, I haven't started my writing goals up, but I have like 5,000 words due by next week for a project. And it's like, oh, I should probably set my goals. And what did I do? I took a nap. That's what I did. So yes,
Well,
you were correct.
unless you're a procrastinator too, but see, some
That I
people
am.
can, they need to create that pressure for themselves.
I totally need that.
I'm a little bit like that too, but then I like blitz it. But I know I can do that, and that comes with confidence over time.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think a bigger thing is, and maybe we can even do it ourselves, is coming up with like little tiny design challenges or like something at the end of the episode, and coming back and talking about it at the beginning of the next one of like what we came up with, just so it's something that other people can be thinking about too. And it's just to get back into that habit of, you know what, it's due that I need an idea for that in 1 week.
Yeah.
And I think you need that routine again.
Yeah. Even one thing that Jay and I used to do, we did this for, I think, 3 or 4 years straight, where we came up with a game idea a day. We have a repository of like something like 1,300 game ideas.
Oh, I don't doubt it.
And it was, excuse me, it was just fun to do that and interesting to do that and a challenge. And they didn't have to be good. That was the best part.
No, they'd be more like, I don't know, like the end of an episode, someone throws out like a random theme or mechanic, and we have to come up with like, or both.
Yeah.
And we just have to come up with like something that we would put together before the next one. And people can share what they came up with, because I think that will create that small amount of inspiration without any like high stakes, but enough to get you back into like that group.
Yeah. And maybe people can come back next week and tell us about it, right? That'd be great. Erica and Sen +1 for getting Amabel on from Ian O'Toole. Ian O'Toole is a wonderful graphic designer who has worked on, I believe, at least one of Amabel's games. So that's wonderful. And yeah, we'd love to have her on. Amy, you were actually the person I was thinking of when I said hopeful, and somebody who is very hopeful and optimistic, but not toxic in their positivity, right? And I think Amy embodies that perfectly. So if you want to come on and talk hope and optimism, I think that would be wonderful.
How to keep your energy at like the right level. Like there is the up but realistic, right? And I think there's a lot of people who are like, I'm not pessimistic, I'm realistic. It's like, no, there really is a difference between the two, right?
Literally, yeah. And there's somewhere in between, right?
Right. And that's the thing, is that you can still be incredibly positive about things, but it also has a lot to do with your own confidence in your ability. Positivity is often that belief that it's like, well, I'm going to make it work. Right. It's like, again, you can't judge yourself by what happens to you, but you can absolutely judge yourself by how you deal with it. Right. And so I think that's where, that's where you got to find your positivity.
Hey, Chad, good to see you. And Jim is saying the design is most likely not your primary income, so switching into design mode can get hard if work life is pressing. You're right that for a lot of us, games isn't our main source of income or our only source of income, and so sometimes the quote unquote real job becomes more important, right? So,
well, it is a hobby. Like that's the thing, is that from like 90% of people in the industry, it's not full time. Right? It's effectively a hobby for them. And that's a big percent. But that also means that you are your boss.
Yeah.
And that is not an easy place to be.
Yeah. I mean, if you're just comparing yourself to everybody else in this chat feed, don't do that, because 90% of this chat feed is full-time in the industry in one way or another. But then there's people like me who aren't, right? I'm full-time at the college, and I just design on the side, and I manage to do both because I have a very supportive family. That's the only reason why that can happen. Or I quit one or the other.
Your home life does have to be conducive to design. It does fascinate me, though maybe makes sense on how few people in the gaming industry actually have children.
Yeah. I mean, that's a thing, right? So I think there's definitely preponderance of people who are either young, unmarried, have no children, or are predominantly male, who aren't doing the care for the child all the time, or a lot of people who have held back on this dream of making games until, their children are old enough to take care of themselves, for a lot of things, right? So it is really interesting, and a lot of people don't see that as a barrier, but it literally is a barrier to
Oh,
participation,
it
right?
took a while for like us to figure out the balance at home because, even with having a like pretty progressive husband, there was still this, what do you mean that you're leaving me all by myself with the kids?
Right?
Right. And it's like he's not incompetent in any way, but it's just this without even thinking about it,
Yeah.
this kind of double standard of, but aren't you just better at it? It's like, why?
How am I better at this just
Like
because
seriously, why? Why am I better? Like because I'm
there's
supposed to be? That's
literally
not how
only
things
probably
work.
like one year of that child's life when biologically that's true,
And
but
even
it
then,
doesn't
I
mean it
didn't
has to be
do
then, right?
anything. Like
Exactly, right?
I had literally no control
Yeah.
over most of that. So
Yeah.
it's just one of
And
those
you can
things that's
also yeah,
unrealistic.
it
It's just
is.
like,
Totally.
just because you had them doesn't mean you're magically great at it.
Right? Chad is just exemplifying this right now. He said the kids are almost in bed for school tomorrow, so now he gets to work on his games.
Hey,
Very true,
it's
very true.
luxury of time, luxury
Mhm.
of all of these things that, a lot of people don't have to consider.
Mhm. Chris Baki, sorry, Baki rhymes with hockey. I still remember that. Wants us to talk about physical playtest organizers to see if there's a playbook that can be established from their experience. And what he means by that, because I asked, I didn't know. People are running real world playtests, and how do we get people to put in feedback, sign up properly, present their COVID pass, which might be a thing. Who knows? Is there a flow chart that helps people determine what kind of games they should play test? All these things. He's wondering if there's something out there to help people who are running playtest groups to run them more efficiently. I think
I think there's something
it's
there for sure.
interesting. Yeah.
Because as much as it's great to get playtesters, there is 100% such thing as the wrong playtesters.
Yeah.
Most
And
people can't see
also the wrong way
past.
to run a play test, right?
Well,
Now
that's
those
it.
people
And
don't come back anymore.
there's a lot of people who can't see past their own likes, right? And so that's something you can cultivate over time, over time. But if you're going to invite someone to test out a game, you almost kind of have to know, unless you genuinely know that they're objective, like really good at being objective of like their own, personal thoughts and feelings, which is
Right.
like a magical ability most people do not have.
Yeah.
Odds are, if it's not their type of game, their feedback might not really be relevant to you.
True. Ian O'Toole says that he's found that joining a group or creating a small group of people who do what you do and are at a similar level of experience is really helpful. It's very therapeutic to have a safe outlet to vent to every now and then. That's good for stress. Yeah, that's a good one.
That's a very
Um,
important one. That's you creating your own small community, right?
yeah.
And they understand what you're talking about.
It makes a big difference. So like we have nobody else in this chat. We have an Asians in tabletop, just a little group that we talk to, and it's just really easy to kind of, for us anyways, talk about things that are related to us and our Asianness, and not have to defend it or not have to. People don't question, "Are you sure that's racist?" and all that kind of stuff. So that is very invigorating in a lot of ways to not have to defend yourself all the time. And I can see that in the same way, with people who are at the same level where you don't have to explain yourself all the time. Like, yeah, I get that. That sounds like a great idea. Keep on going.
Yeah, you can talk things out differently. It's
Mhm.
like when you get to the point where you can use all gamer speak and someone knows exactly what you're referring to because you just shortcutted the conversation, right?
Mhm.
Or you can have a talk of like you're like can already start talking about if someone suggests something, you'd be like, oh, well, it's interesting because I actually ran through this, and this is where I outputted. Like, where do you see it going? Because you can talk at that level now,
Yeah.
which
Hey, James
normally,
is here. There
yeah.
is another Asian in the house.
So
Yay.
you say it and they appear.
Yeah. um Kathleen Mercury, speaking of shortcuts, shortcutted the whole make a suggestion and just suggested that she come on the show as a guest.
I mean, I
And
always love talking to
we love
her.
Kath. So yeah, Kathleen is currently in Bucharest, I think,
I think
Romania.
so. I was gonna say it'd be interesting seeing what the gaming scene is like there too.
Yeah, or how you teach game design in a language. I don't know. All sorts of stuff. So that's where Kath is right now, which is wonderful. Catherine Dreyer said she'd like to hear from Emily Willix and other people who specialize in editing and creating rule books. So that would be a good one if we can get Emily and maybe Nit at the same time to talk about the writing of the rule book and the layout of the rule book and how that synergizes into a package, a product that is readable and understandable.
Incredibly important.
Yeah. Styles change, as with all developing genres. And Catherine is interested in what a current style guide would be and examples of games with great rule books and why they are great for either current fashions or even better, ones that are timeless.
That'd be good to have a catalog of, like, even if you get people to vote too on what rule book do they think honestly it's just well done, because it doesn't really matter what it's for. Ozart's doing something that other people could be learning from anyway.
Right. Yeah, even if it's not great overall, maybe one part of it is really cool. Also, Catherine is interested in accessibility in rule books. Being neurodivergent, she is exploring the best ways to teach rules to her to other neurodivergent people, but there are so many considerations to include, right? Like visual clarity, colorblind friendly, text color choices, all that kind of stuff. And she's an artist, so she's very interested in to hear how these all balance out in the end. So not just the words, but what's the presentation and how do we teach?
That's very important. Honestly, I think things are too word heavy. And I'll be fully honest, guys. You'd be amazed how many rule books get, like, just to save some money, there'll be a few less pages. And this is true of a ton of publishers. And so sometimes when you want that best rule book, the designer probably did too. There might be a reason that cost is often the reason that it ends up being very text heavy and not getting maybe quite the picture layout that it should, because a lot of people are picture readers and then they go back to the text. When you don't have that, though, it's really hard to find reference to where you're at.
Right. Yeah, I love this. Jay Little commented on Catherine's post saying, having read and graded literally hundreds of rule books as a professor in game design and written a fair share of his own, working for FFG and beyond, he agrees that this would be a really interesting topic to cover. And then Catherine said, what does an A+ rule book look like? So what's a rubric? What is the rubric
that's actually
for all of us teachers out here? What is the rubric
put one
for this?
Together where it talks about, like, there's probably, the main categories of, like, clarity, step by step, visual.
Because if we can write a rubric for this, we can publish it for everybody to have.
Yeah.
And those of us in the teaching profession understand rubrics, but we can also teach you how to use a rubric. That's super easy.
That's another part too.
Super easy.
Like, how would you grade yourself on this?
Yeah, exactly. And then you take your rule book through the rubric and see, hey, maybe I can improve it here, or maybe this is really good, but this is not so good, right? Because there's going to be some deficits in everybody's rule writing as we go. So yeah, there is something that we can do to make this a good thing, a product for people to have. And really, in the end, that's a lot of what Meeple Syrup is about, is making tools to help designers design better games. Ian O'Toole, real job alongside side job is super hard. Yes. Getting burnt out. Jamie Jones is talking about doing design work for toys and stuff after families go to bed, and people are talking about being wiped out after they put their kids to bed. Yeah, it is true that there is a lot of luck to be able to transition yourself into full-time game work. And so there's definitely skill. Don't get me wrong. Ian, if you've ever seen Ian's work, you'd understand just how skilled he is at graphic design, and Erica in game design. And, it is a lot of that, Are you financially able to do that? Go go full-time freelancer.
I never see it, and to be fair, I couldn't.
Right. Like this was a full-time job where it was salaried, right?
Right. And so that's like, it's also knowing, like, what you can do.
Yeah.
Right. And that's the thing, is I knew I couldn't go full-time freelance. So I did 2 jobs for almost 5 years. Right.
Yep.
It's like, I had to learn it all. And then, I kind of was rewarded for what I learned, right, by transitioning my job as well.
Yeah. And what you bring to the table. Perfect. Yeah. Ian is also saying high five for office dogs.
Yes, my tiny, tiny little Daphne.
She's awesome. Jade Dugay is saying Kira and Peevely, who've had on the show before, and Trisha Sidney would be great to hear from. We don't talk enough about the people running things behind the scenes. Yes, that's right. There are people who run things behind the scenes that you don't know.
Listening to like Nicole and other people like that, it's amazing what you don't know. Like,
right?
You know what I mean?
Right? Like honestly, I think game designers in a lot of ways are like academics. We just kind of hand stuff in and it magically happens. And we don't think about all these little kind of things like who's going to contact the factory when something goes wrong. It isn't me, right? And a lot of people will ask me, and this is continuously asking me, how come you don't just run your own Kickstarters? Because I don't have the time and I don't want to. And I gladly will pay somebody all that or give them 93, 98%, whatever percentage of the pie to do that because I don't want to. I don't have the skill.
That's not one job. That's like 10
it's many,
jobs.
many jobs done by many people.
Anyone who says that doesn't understand what actually goes into a Kickstarter.
Right. And so, yeah, me getting 7 or 8% is perfectly okay. If somebody else and a bunch of other people are doing all the rest of the work.
Well, I was gonna say, and you're not really the one with any liability for like the financial costs or like, we wait a long time in game design to even see anything out of anything you've sold. That's why I think
right,
exactly.
Yeah, the risk isn't on us, so it's very different. Jay Little suggests we should definitely get in touch with Marcus Ross and Damon Stone, two incredible designers. Definitely drop names more often. That's great. Yeah.
Names are great because then we can contact the person directly and see if they're up for like an episode.
My neighbor Ty, he lives in London, Ty Tiefenbach, is interested to hear some opinions and insights on the trend of solitaire games. I've seen some really interesting single-player only games in recent years, along with games having extra components for specialized player versus game modes. Yeah, and so I think that's a great topic. That is not my area of expertise, so we'll have to find somebody who is really good at solo game design. So if you know anybody who you think, hey, they are amazing at solo game design,
that
shoot their name to us.
Skill. Like it 100%, that is its own skill.
Yeah. Josh Dirksen suggests Hiromi Koda. They've done a bunch of awesome RPG work and cultural consulting. Yeah. So we can definitely have more stuff on cultural consultation. I know Jess wanted to make an infographic about cultural consultation again, not again, but for one of this year's infographs, which would be wonderful. So if we get Hiromi on, I know James Mendes Hodes was willing to help us out with making that. Just giving people like the 101 on things to think about before you start making your game. So here's just like a kind of a highlight note on that is that if you are getting somebody like me to consult on your game after you've designed your game and expect a rubber stamp on Asian stuff in your game because I have an Asian consultant, that's not going to happen. Most cultural consultants aren't going to do that. We kind of need to be involved earlier in the process, and we need to have a voice, and we need to have some authority in saying, yeah, you can't do that and you won't do that, that you have to agree to that. And so starting out with this mentality ahead of time and understanding how to use cultural consultation to your benefit is very, very, very important. So yeah, that's something we'd like to produce this year for you. This is a great one. Helena would also like to suggest David from Pematawe Games in Edmonton. That's a indigenous game store in Edmonton that has a youth program. They had quite a bit of buzz early in the pandemic about supporting youth through games. And they also do some cultural consulting, and that would be a great interview. And you are correct, Helena, that would be wonderful. And so maybe we can reach out to them. And yeah, Adam commented that he was going to suggest it as well, and that the folks at Pematawe Games do some Twitch streaming. So there we go. So we can reach out to them as well. Hello, Kate Finch. Adam is talking about time and experience that having the time and experience to make things happen, becoming good at something to make it able to be Kickstarter ready, you learn fast that there's some things that you just don't want to do, and you
Or
you
not your
also learn
skill.
that there are people that are really good at it, and they're worth every penny that you are paying them. Ian actually pushes back against the idea that a designer doesn't have as much to risk. I
Oh, I
think
meant
that,
it purely financially.
yeah,
But
yeah,
you're right. Is like, I
yeah,
mean, there are things that you didn't see the dividends, like what you got out of it for another like up to 2 years
2 years,
later.
yeah.
And most people can't live like that.
Yeah. But he's right in the fact that there is a tendency for people to undervalue people's time in this industry and place value mostly on the cash required to manufacture / the value of the pieces in the box. And you are completely correct that one. And that was not our intention to talk to
Yeah,
downplay
I meant more
the
like
human
heavy
cost.
holding up the financial cost.
Yeah. The sheer amount, and also that the risk of, if the project fails, I still have that game, that company might be sunk. Right.
Mhm.
That's the kind of risk we're talking about. But the sheer amount of time that designers put into their games is staggering and often undervalued. Yes, you are correct,
And
Ian.
you
That,
know
that
what? I
is
think
totally
we
true.
see that with a lot of people, especially when they sign their first contracts, right? Where you're just so excited to get that signed. And you know what? I mean, why? Of course, it's exciting. You're finally gonna you're gonna have your game out there on a shelf
With a
somewhere.
name on it.
Exactly, and that's really what you're giving away. Is like you're often severely undervaluing yourself just for that chance to have your name out there, and I think unfortunately, when publishers know that people will do this
Yeah,
too.
and it breeds a bad habit is what it does. It's like, oh yeah, I'll do that. Oh yeah, I'll do that. I'll do that to make your publisher happy so that their game gets made and all that kind of stuff. And this is when we talk about things like scope creep.
Well, you don't know how to say no until you've
That's
honestly
it.
been into it too long. Like I will say, this is one of those industries where you learn it yourself and usually at your own expense.
Yep. Because there isn't really any other way to do it. There are definitely classes and courses on game design, but they don't teach anything about the rest of this stuff that you have to deal with, which is exactly, I think, what Sarah Ship was talking about. Like, what's the responsibility after you sign this contract?
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot. It doesn't seem like a lot, but it's a lot. It's things like, how do you write a bio? How do you write a designer diary? And, how many of those should you have to write? And should you have to write any? And what if you say no? All those things. And
Yeah,
these are just like
is
500,000 word things,
international
but
profit for the possibility is
yeah.
like, is like there's a lot of things where, especially if like, are you giving them something that they can build more games off of or more in the space? Has that been included? Is like, there's
Yeah,
so
yeah. Some of that's
many
legal and
places this
contractual,
could
and some of it's
go.
not, right? Jamie
Yeah.
Jones says financially, the designer's number of hours often doesn't get covered by the money paid, and that is
Oh,
entirely
not even
true.
close. Not
Yeah.
even
If
close.
you worked out an hourly rate, it would be laughable.
You'd be
Um,
like, yeah.
but often that's not what designers are really in it for, right? And that's not necessarily the best mentality to have about some of the things that we do.
Well, it's why it's such an interesting industry is
Yeah.
because it's supporting people both full time and people who are genuinely, I mean, tourist is the wrong word, but super casual. Like
Yeah.
this is something they can pop in and out of, and good for you if you're also great at design and get something signed, but you're playing in the exact same space as somebody where this might be their livelihood. And those two people are not negotiating the same way. They're not going to be
No.
looking for the same thing. They're not going to approach the work in the same way. Like there is very little the same between those two people.
Yeah, and so some of us who do have, day jobs and whatnot have to kind of check that. Say, okay, is this for because I want this to happen or because this is equitable? Right? Am I taking 2% because that's what everybody should take as an equitable contract? Or is it like, yeah, I don't care because I make, a six-figure salary at my regular day job.
So I can say
I
like
can
I'm going
take
to take
that.
half of what a working wage would be. And because that's kind of, it's one of those larger things because it's not talked about either.
Yeah. So here's something you can do, and I've done this before, as somebody who does have a decent paying salary and a job that I love, is I've actually taken less in order to hire somebody else. Say, hey, I'll take less, but we need this developer, or we need this specific graphic designer, or
Mhm.
I want to work with this artist. and you're paying them at their full rate, that kind of thing. I will be Shaquille O'Neal and get Kobe Bryant on my team. Because in the end, the game is matters more to me than the money, but the money still matters in that we don't devalue people's worth, right? I can devalue my own worth personally, but not the worth of designers, right? You did pay X amount of dollars. I'm just taking less of that X and giving it to somebody else, but you did pay it.
Yeah, it's like, having a co-designer kind of thing.
Yeah, and I'm totally down with that. Chris Baki would be happy to come on and talk about digital playtesting, or just how to. He's a digital nomad, which is super cool to me. Like he lives in like 17 different countries in a year, and how does he design games and prototype and all this kind of stuff?
That's a good one because most people need their space, right? Or they need something to ground them. So
I don't know how he does it.
Well, that would be perfect for now, right? Because I got to think a lot of people, even though they're stuck in one place, they've got to feel fairly adrift creatively, right? Because what are you anchoring on?
Yeah, this is a wonderful one for Matt Fantastic. It is a fantastic idea. And our condolences go out to Matt. He lost his dog, which is very sad. Yeah. Matt would love to hear more from people outside the industry, and so do I. Excuse me, this is where I find the most inspiration. I find a ton of hugely useful info and ways to think about things when I go outside game design as a discipline. Psychology, child development, political science, user experience, etc. all have a lot to offer when it comes to making better games. No doubt about it. Those are great fields to talk about and to have other people come in. And so the key here is for us to find somebody who likes games and can speak to games, but also has another area of expertise. And so that's, I think, a long-term goal for us is to develop that kind of roster. People would like to come in and maybe talk about, child development or something like that.
I was actually going to say child development, I think, is a big one. I'm actually slowly putting together like an infographic myself. One of the reasons is I don't think people understand the stages of play and what that translates to types of games. Right. And so as you're going, it's like fine, the first few stages are relatively fixed, but then there's kind of an explosion of all these different types of facets, but people fall into different categories of them, and games target those specific types of play. And I think there's something very much intentional about that, but people don't realize they're doing it.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. It's a lot of chicken and egg type stuff, but yeah, if you want to come at it from a very, bottom up approach, then yeah, you can literally say, I want this to target parallel play in, 3 to 5 year old children and blah, blah, blah. You can go from that.
It helps our audience targeting a lot better.
For sure.
Because then you think about, okay, I want this style of play. It's this type of game. Realistically, who is that person? Because
and then you can do all sorts of stuff from there. You will know what language level you now need to use. You now need to know how big the components can be.
Yeah, who your rule book is even targeted to talking to.
Yeah, is it the parents of the child themselves, all that kind of stuff. Very, very, very interesting. The wonderful Kate Bullock, who was a huge reason for the success of the Avatar campaign as a community manager. These are like the unsung heroes of Kickstarter, by the way, when you're talking about Trisha and you're talking about Kate and people like that who run those communities and deal with the continual ridiculousness of entitled what backers and stuff like that.
Yes.
Oh my gosh, there were some ridiculous things. Kate's like, did you know that people are talking about this? It's because I don't pay attention to Kickstarter. That's the other reason. Like, say, like I'll take 1% less for somebody else
to field all the
do
nonsense.
that. Right?
People ask some really dumb crap. Or not even very entitled crap on Kickstarter if you haven't.
At some point, it's not even dumb or entitled. It's downright offensive.
That too.
Right?
But they usually kind of start offensive, in all honesty.
Yes. Kate would like to talk about how to be a great convention guest that gets invited back. That's really cool. Kate's a wonderful person, by the way. So I think she'd be lovely to have on. There we go. And that's it. That's our list. I know we're over. I know we ran over. But...
Yeah, it's been a few years since we had Kate on too.
It's been a long time since I've actually seen Kate, and we like live around the corner from each other type thing.
Pictures on Facebook.
Yeah. Tool says it's weird and sometimes worrying how mercenary it can feel to ask for payment for your time. A lot of publishers assume you're happy to spend hours at their booth, write diaries, etc. It's common with any industry that most enter through their hobby. Underline their hobby, right? Because we are passionate about this. And so some of that kind of stuff we need to think about. How do I build that into my contract? How am I getting paid for that? I can whip up 1,000 words pretty quick because I like writing, but that doesn't mean I should be not paid for it, right? Just because I like it.
Means that might not be a skill someone else has.
Exactly.
And so we're setting these precedents of all of it.
Yeah. Right.
Because it is really hard to understand when you're allowed to say no sometimes.
Totally. And there's a power dynamic, right? Like if I say no, what's going to happen?
Kind of in charge, and you don't know how far that goes.
Yeah, or how they'll feel about you saying no to them when you say no, I can't write that, and they go, well, it's going to affect our Kickstarter.
Now,
yeah, exactly.
Exactly. What was their experience like with other designers? Are they holding you at the same level? It's a wacky one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Jim is suggesting a scriptwriter that can give us insight on storytelling, story acts, narrative design, and there are definitely a lot of people that I know in like narrative game design who could totally do that as well. But it might be interesting to see somebody from outside, like Matt says, from maybe film or TV, who does scripting for that kind of stuff. So yeah, and Kate is saying at the end here, I like the work I do too, but I absolutely deserve to be paid a fair wage for it, as does everyone else in the industry. Completely true. And it's funny, and I know this to be completely a fact, that I have made more money developing a game than the designer will ever see from that game. Because I bill out at X number of dollars an hour and I put in 100 hours into it.
That's the upfront rather than what you might get as a back end on percent.
Yeah. But the thing is that it's funny because a lot of publishers and Helena, if you're still listening, I know a lot of publishers though are really willing to put the upfront costs into paying the people who make this game into a thing that they can then sell, and then the designer kind of gets left to the end, and then also has to do other things like go on appearances and I'll do all those things because I enjoy them. But the thing is, is there a way to build that into your time, or say no, I'm not doing any of that? If you want me to do that, that's a service I'm going to provide, and my time is important.
Kind of is.
It's weird.
I only say it's because it's not a skill everybody's got, and so it can't be a baseline.
Yeah, I think that's true, right? Adam says, someone once told me not to take jobs just because I need the money. I still don't agree with them in the whole because it's hard out there. That's why most people work. It's true. But there's some truth on how that power dynamic distorts your work process. Yes, that's what I'm talking about. You should never be punished for being able to do your work quickly. That's another thing that's also true. So if I'm hiring Ian O'Toole, by the way, which I love to work with Ian at some point.
Yeah, the hourly awesome game designer. What you've done.
Right? Ian can whip out amazing graphic design in a quarter of the time that it would take somebody who has less skill. And so what are we paying for? Are we paying for their time or their experience?
I like to call that, and this is I swear to God, this running joke of if I had an autobiography, what it would be called. It's called when you're getting punished for competence. And so there's often this thing where...
That sounds like being a teacher. Hold on. Wait a minute.
No, but it's one of those things where if you're faster than other people, they're mad at you because you do it too quickly. It's supposed to take this long. I'm only paying you, what Ian's talking about, where I can do it quicker, but I don't earn as much as somebody who's slower, or there's the idea of, oh, well, you're doing it better, so you're going to do twice as much work.
Wait a minute. That doesn't work.
But that's exactly what it is. It's all these ways that you can be punished for being competent.
Yeah, no, exactly.
And I have to say, I worked in a lot of industries, and you can get punished for being competent in just about all of them.
Yep. Andrew brought up a good suggestion. And this is bringing in a whole bunch of geekdom, but also into script writing and things like that. And definitely, I have a lot of contacts in the comic book industry. We could probably get a comic book writer in. But Andrew is specifically asking for Gail Simone. And Gail has already said that, coming on shows is real difficult for her because she gets so many requests. So I don't know. I can put the ask out,
But I
but
think
I
the
wouldn't
comic
hold my
book
breath.
field is a good overlap right now, just because
Yeah.
a lot of that is being translated into games, and there's a lot of future potential there.
Yeah. Whereas somebody like Matt would definitely come on anytime.
Yeah.
Cullen might
And
come on. So there are a couple other writers that I know very well that would probably like to come on and talk
I
about
think,
scripts and comics and
well, I think narratives are on the rise
narrative.
too, right? So not
Oh,
only
definitely.
I think there's a lot of crossover here where these, again, because all these audiences, all these different outlets are starting to bleed into each other. And this is
Yeah,
definitely one
for
of those
sure.
spaces.
For sure. And the games are really cool because they sort of extend the narrative or push it into spaces where the book or the comic or the movie might not have gone. And I think that's so cool.
Mhm.
I know Jay and I work really hard on pushing the boundaries of storytelling when we make narrative games, like the Coded Chronicles series, where that story didn't exist. And like it's a game based on a singular titular movie, and there are no other movies in the series. How do you make it into a game where you don't know what's going to happen?
Mhm.
Well, we write around that. And we've had to do it a couple times, and it's super fun. And in the end, you get a rich product because of it. But yeah, let's talk about all this stuff. And so, what we're gonna do for all y'all is Erica and I are gonna go away. We're gonna go look over our lists and go over this chat and see what people talked about, and come up with some people to have on the show over the next 4 months until December, and then we'll do the process again in January. So thank you so much for everybody coming and spending, over almost 2 hours with us. We talked a
Yeah, I
lot.
told you we fill it in no problem
I
with
know, I know.
people.
We were actually sitting down here before saying we need a list of stuff. And
Well,
then
we
Erica
had
said,
less.
well, no, I don't think we do. I think we have a list.
We had a general
Um,
idea, but I also knew
yeah.
we could fill time. So
Yeah. So we're definitely going to reach out to some of the very people who are in this chat to come chat with us. Allison, Amy, a lot of you we want on the show. So please say yes and we'll schedule some time with you. And yeah, I think that this is going to be a good season to sort of kickstart us back into the world as it opens up a little bit more and more.
yeah,
So
let's try to raise each other up in these right ways too, right? Like
yeah,
there's been so much to worry about that, you know what, don't just need more right now. I think it's more about how do you get back into your creative set and like we want to talk about more maybe the purity of game design itself and things like
yeah.
that.
Excellent, excellent, excellent. So, on that note, if you want to reach us, we're on Twitter at Meeple Syrup. I am at Senfeng Lim. Erica is here at Erica Buyuris.
Mhm.
We are both the only people with those names, so there you go.
You'll find us.
Yeah, and again, as always, if you'd like to support us at patreon.com/Meeple Syrup, that helps us keep the lights on here. Hey, Erica, I don't know if you knew this, but this software that we use
Mhm.
is like $33 a month. I didn't know it was that much when I signed. I think it's increased in price over the last year.
Oh yeah.
So I
Mm.
looked at StreamYard today, and StreamYard does almost the exact same stuff for like $20 a month. So
We might
I
flip
don't know.
over.
We might flip over. We'll have to see. We'll have to do an A/B. I'm not sure what we're using on here that isn't offered there, and I'm pretty sure we can accommodate for that. The other thing that StreamYard does better than this, it might not do all the fancy stuff that we do with graphics here, which is whatever. But I think StreamYard you can actually have up to 10 people on.
Oh, because we're limited to 4, aren't we?
We're limited to 4.
Yeah. Well, that'd be
Yeah.
nice for like big group discussions.
Yeah, those big group discussions are cool. They're a little hard to manage sometimes, but we can do it. We can do it.
Or at least have more of a rotation.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, and that's just to note that Meeple Syrup doesn't run on nothing. It runs on the kind, gracious donations of our patrons, and we will keep on doing what we're doing and creating some more infographics for you. The rubric for rule books, I think that's an awesome idea, Erica. Let's get on that. And I know Jess wants to do the one on cultural consulting, so let's talk about
Yeah.
those as our projects for the fall.
And I'm working on getting our podcast up and going again.
Oh yeah, thanks very much. Erica is the podcast master, mostly because I don't know what I'm doing with those. So there you go.
I gotta pull all the audio, but I'll get there.
Yeah, wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Oh, I'll have something really important to tell you all, hopefully soon. And I'm not sure what we're gonna do with it, but we have something coming our way. I'll tell Erica off air, but the rest of you can find out later. Erica needs to find out about it sooner. So there you go. All right, and next week, who knows?
We were talking about potentially we had all those librarians interested in coming on. I think we were looking at maybe compiling them next week.
Yeah, so that looks like a good one to read them about. So we'll go do that, and we'll get you all updated on our schedule over the next little while. All right, thanks very much for watching. We'll talk to you all soon. Have a great night, everybody. It was great talking to you. This was actually very invigorating, so thanks a lot. Bye.